Welcome to our podcast.
From Two Luckies.
Two Luckies. Here we are revisiting Little House on the Prairie, starting from the pilot, and our goal is to make it all the way to the last episode.
Yes, and we want to talk about this from an adult's perspective.
Because we loved these shows as a kid, and they hit different as an adult.
Yes, so we're going to be talking about in this series what we've termed Dyin, Cryin, and Lyin.
Because all of their plot elements seem to fit in one of those buckets, and each episode seems to have at least two of those qualities. Sometimes they have more.
So stay tuned. Here comes the pilot.
Let's listen.
Welcome to the first ever edition of Two Luckies,
The podcast.
coming at you today. Tell you a little bit about Two Luckies.
Two Luckies have been too lucky to be together for decades now.
Decades of life experience, living, loving, all the goodness in between. And we're here to bring you our take and our views on Two Luckies, the podcast.
The podcast.
And today we're going to be talking about...
Oh, we're doing our first ever installment
of the series called
Dyin, Cryin,
and Lyin.
Lyin.
Dyin, Cryin, and Lyin.
They are sometimes prying, but they are always dying, crying, and lying. And we've just noticed that this is what we've got for television as children. And now that we're adults, we're finding out that it really just boils down to those three things.
Right. All the things that they tried to portray to us. Oh, look at these shows. Look how they talk about, the courageous spirit, the never-ending fight in these people. And I guess I bought that as a kid. Did you buy it?
Yes, I thought that this was the ideal. This is what your dad was supposed to jump in rivers and go above and beyond for everyone.
He's
but
supposed
then
to dive in the rivers and go get the doc, to say when you just have a rash.
But then you find out that he was never home. She was almost like a married single mother.
Yep.
And she had animals to take care of and
Now, don't get me wrong. I still think they're great shows to watch, but, the adult mind in me looks at this and, that's the perfect saying. Dyin, Cryin, and Lyin.
Right.
They all have the same qualities.
They really do. It boils down to almost every episode has at least two of the three. At least two.
And if we start with the pilot, we're not even 5 minutes into the pilot, and you get your first
crying.
They're crying, and why? Because the family is going to embark on their own, and they're going to go travel for miles and miles just for that spirit to be on their own and provide for themselves and forget everybody else. Where they are now is just too crowded. So what do we do?
Luckies.
We're just going to up and abandon the family and say, we're out of here. So right away we got Cryin.
But they're doing this at a time without any kind of reliable mail. It's sending a telegram or whatever they called them back then was very expensive. And electricity was yet to be invented yet, let alone available.
And think about it. Your vehicle is what?
Your vehicle was your feet, some kind of animal you could ride, or if you could get an animal to pull a cart. That was pretty much it. They didn't even have flying.
And then you had to hope that the cart stayed together long enough because you didn't have roads to travel.
Exactly. Sometimes you had to just bump over whatever was in front of you and hope you were following the right direction. Very often they ended up in the wrong direction.
You just had to land. So they start off and they take this adventure. And we're not even 10 minutes into it now, and we say, okay, we have to make a crossing here. Now, maybe the kid me looked at that and said, oh, look at this. They're gonna do it. They're gonna go for it. They're going to cross. Oh, look at the tragedy. Look at the peril. Look at the dangers they're fighting. I'm looking at that today and say, look at this idiot. Instead of taking the extra 5 minutes to survey the land, no. Wagon's good. We're going. Yeah.
Yeah, he just went send it. I mean, there was no batten down the hatches. There was no making sure everybody was in the wagon. He didn't even stop to look to see if anybody else was there but himself. And from the wide shot that they got overhead, you could tell that if they went 6 inches to the right, it was like up to your ankles instead of over your head.
Instead of over your head and 20-mile-an-hour current.
I mean, so like as an adult looking at this, I looked at it more as like you could have just taken the time. I mean, really, like what was 5 minutes of your day? The dog would have been with you, and it would have saved a whole bunch of crying and some lying.
Yeah, but they didn't take the time. They just got into it, and in the process, what'd you do? You lost the dog, you pissed off your kids, and
well, how
your
about
missus,
terrifying your kids?
and then you almost dying yourself.
Right, you went right
got
under.
Swept under.
I mean, and then your wife's screaming, and I have to admit, she drove the wagon a lot better than he did. He wasn't really doing much, hanging off the side, nowhere near the horses, and she was driving them out of that water.
Yeah, so kid me looks at that and says, "Wow, that was courageous." Adult me, no, that fits under either Dyin, Cryin, or Lyin. What would you rate that one?
I'm afraid it is a big one.
I would rate that one as definitely Cryin, because there was some crying when somebody got swept underneath the wagon.
Well, no, that was screaming, crying. I mean, that was the kind of like
that
terror.
Was crying.
Terror.
That was epic crying.
Yes, that was crying out in fear, crying.
But then the other one is what? You get to the end, Lyin. Where's the dog? He'll catch up with us.
Yeah, but as an adult, you look at this and say, was all of this really necessary? Just a little bit of preparation, and we could have avoided this entire issue.
Maybe it's as adults, you have your own family, and you actually go through these processes, and, when your kids come up and they're on their own, and you think back to all the things that happened from when they were little up until they're big people. Then you watch this and go, really, dude? Really? Come on. Come on. Do better.
Yes.
Do better.
I mean, throughout the series, he's constantly away from home, and everyone else's problems seem to be more important than whatever they're dealing with at home. I mean, she does everything. She takes care of the kids. She does most of the cleaning because the kids actually have chores.
Yep.
She takes care of all of the animals. She has to walk into town miles to sell eggs to help get them money. And where is he? He could be 100 miles away somewhere, just sending them a telegram that cost them money.
Meanwhile, somebody had a bad weather event. Gotta walk. But
Yeah,
that's for another story.
He just took off. We're veering off into other territory.
But here's the funny part of it. So now we're assuming that the dog's gone. The kids and mom are all pissed off, and
well,
dad,
no, you got a kid that was walking by alongside of the wagon because she was distraught.
She wouldn't even ride in the wagon.
I mean, she was beyond crying
because dad was evil.
But, well, no, not even that.
He was evil.
No, I think she was looking to see that the dog would follow her scent. That's what I thought. If you walk outside and that was your dog, you were close to them, they're going to follow.
That might have more been instinct, but the fact that she did that was actually a brilliant idea. It was brilliant.
Well, and she was mourning the loss of her dog, which she had no idea whether or not he had survived or whether she would ever see him again. So, why? Because her father couldn't take 2 seconds out of his day to make sure that the dog was with them before he shot over the deepest part of that area.
Yeah, we got to make sure that we set the scene properly, because when you say dog, you can think of many different sizes and types. We're talking about dog with maybe 3-inch legs, maybe 4. So it's not like they say, the wagon's too full. Come on. This is a dog you could literally pick up and hold on your lap.
Yes.
Hold on your lap.
Like the kids could hold his dog on their lap.
Right.
Yes.
So, big fail. Do better. We definitely had Cryin, and they're lucky
They're
there
lucky.
wasn't any dying. in
Yes,
that one.
because we avoided Dyin over here because the dog somehow found its way back and made it to them while the daughter was sitting under the wagon crying
Yep.
for the loss of her dog. And her father did do some lying.
Oh, big time did some lying. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought bad things about you. Well,
No, that's what
Well.
No, the lying was the father saying, "Oh, it's no big deal. He'll find us." And then it was later on. Well, we lost a good guard dog. It's like you could have thought of that 5 minutes before you went across the river.
okay. And I have questions with that guard dog. Really?
Really, this dog was not a garden to anything at all.
I don't know what you're guarding with that, but okay.
No, I mean, really, he was really ill-suited for the environment,
Yeah.
too. He had the kind of coat that
Well-
would have caught in the brambles. He was somewhat of a long-haired kind of situation, which would have been hard to care for, and he was the kind of the dog that needed a regular shave, which he always seemed to have the same length coat, so they must have done it every week, because that dog never seemed to have any longer
To
hair.
me, points off.
Points
Points off.
Well, their dog was ill-suited to live out in the wilds of the Americas back
So
then.
think about this. The dog shows up again. It'd be a happy moment. Although we're going to count this as a crying because this definitely involves some crying. Although we could say it was a happy crying, it was still crying.
Okay, what is it?
That the dog came back.
Yes, so we
The
had
dog came
sad
back.
crying. We had sad crying because the dog may be dying, and then we had hooray crying
That
because
the dog didn't
the dog
die.
returned, and we had scream in terror from
Okay.
the mother because the father had gotten sucked up under that current when they crossed the river, and now they finally get to new land.
They get to the new land. Oh, great, we're here. Now let's talk about that new land for a
Okay,
bit.
there was not a tree in sight in any direction
says-
at all.
Yeah, this is great. We got trees. There was one tree. It looked like it was 20 miles away.
20 miles at least, and that was with them
it's in a big-
zooming in.
It's in a big valley. We got plenty of water. Didn't see any water in that shot. It just saw
and-
grass.
well,
Just grass as
during-
far as the eye can see.
During the episode, they showed like very high up long shots of the area where you could see constantly mowed grass, first of all. Like, who's mowing the grass? Not only that, you could see wagon ruts that were there. Whose wagon ruts they just got there? I noticed that right in the beginning. The first shot they showed of him riding his horseback, there's wagon ruts.
Right.
What did they come in the mud?
That was for take 2.
That was for take 2.
Okay.
But not only that, there is no tree or body of water visible any place.
Well, if there was no tree, at least there couldn't be a hanging.
But all of a sudden they start building this building because they decided
Listen,
this
they're
is
happy.
it.
They build the building.
With
This
what
is-
trees?
This is where they meet Mystery.
This is when Mystery shows up, and I will be honest, from an adult perspective, Mystery treats these kids better than either of these parents ever did. He's thoughtful. He goes out of his way to do stuff, and he cares deeply about them, the children.
Yeah, and somehow he seems better fitted to navigate the land and circumstances than Dad can.
Well, not only that, the mother was very much against him because she said he was smelly and that he was teaching one of them how to spit and he was being inappropriately teaching uncouth behaviors.
And let's not forget, he doesn't appear to be a God-fearing person. Doesn't appear to be. Doesn't know that because there isn't a God place in church within 100 miles of this.
I could have sworn she asked him though, and when he no, that's true.
They didn't bring
she
that
just
up
kind
until
of
way later. She just made the assumption. And when you assume...
Right, you make an ass out of you and
me.
So, you're right. You're right about that. I think Mystery got the short end of the stick here with the mother, and we found out that the oldest daughter in the pilot has the same kind of vibe as the mother. And here we have the next segment where Dad may be lying.
Yes, let's break this down. Okay. So here's the the middle kid comes out and says, "Hey, Dad, why are you tying the dog up? You never tied the dog up before."
And the dog dislikes it. So we already know dog that came back
Yep.
to them, loved them so much,
So-
followed them across the fields, swam out of the water.
So-
Let's tie him to the gate.
Here's his answer. "I don't want you to untie this dog until I come back." "But why are you tying him up?" "I don't want him to disturb my hunt." Okay, we're going to find out in just a little bit, but I'm going to call right there. Lyin.
Yes, this is lying. We find out the details of the lying, but
More on that to come.
the daughter, we already know, has good instinct, though, because this was an unusual circumstance. So we know up until this point, this dog has never been tied up because the dog dislikes it. And this dog has been used as a guard dog and takes its duty seriously, even though it's really more of a not in the wild country
So-
kind of dog. But it does a good job. This
So,
dog.
yeah, so let's keep it going. So, why is this important? In the very next scene, now we're introduced to the indigenous people.
Yes, so there were people on this land before they got there. They didn't ask. No one was asked, can we settle here? They were told by the government they could do it. And now we meet the fact that there's people other than
And we
them
find out
here.
about them because Jack starts going crazy.
Yes, so the dog that's tied to a post goes ballistic.
And next thing you know, here's the indigenous people who not only let themselves in, but start, what'd you say, ransacking the place?
Well,
I mean, one of them-
they were touching the mother's hair, which they were very fearful about. The kids got into a fight about untying the dog.
Yes.
Which I really would, I don't know, remember how I felt as a kid about that, but watching it now, where her older sister pushes her down because she was trying to untie the dog to protect her mother.
Yes. The older sister, no. Dad said,
Right.
don't untie that dog ever.
Right, because so what's Dad really saying? As an adult, I'm looking at Dad saying, you're not allowed to make decisions, I make the decisions, and whether you
Yes.
have circumstances that I never thought of, you still have to listen to me, and that comes up too.
So the dog doesn't get untied. These people come in. They end up taking some things.
Well, they tear into their pillow. The two older girls get to watch their mother being touched on the hair by a strange man they've never seen before.
And the
The
youngest
youngest
child
Is
is
crying.
crying.
She's crying underneath the bed. And I think all four of them are terrorized. And what happens? Dad comes home from his hunting expedition where we don't see whether or not he was successful. And he asks Ma how her day was, which comes to our next
Lyin.
Lyin, because she says
Everything was fine.
everything was great. So now here he goes. How does he find out that something happened?
The middle child.
The middle child who wanted to untie the dog that almost didn't survive, right?
And what does he get upset about?
He gets upset about the fact that the daughter tried to untie the dog without his permission, no matter what the circumstances.
And gives her a good tongue lashing.
Right, but the way that we find out that Ma was a lion, according to Dad over here, is because the middle daughter says, you can't have any of your tobacco tonight you can't have your pipe after dinner because Mom gave your tobacco away, to which Dad peers knowingly now at Mom because she was a lion.
She was a lion.
And now she had to explain why the tobacco was gone because people that he
Yes.
knew about, this is where it ties into before.
But now we're going back to the dog, right?
Yes.
So now we go outside and, here's Dad telling middle child there all about his hunting expedition, which we'll touch on that in a second. But then finally tells her, well, this is why I tied the dog up or didn't want you to untie him. I saw those people earlier and I was afraid that, he might go after them.
No.
So you saw these people and you said nothing about it.
Right. Nothing about the people who had to stay on the land that you were riding out of every day to go hunting. But
What you said was you tied the dog up so he wouldn't bother your hunting trip. Now you're saying you tied the dog up so they wouldn't chase after these people. What do we call that?
lion.
Lyin.
I call it lion.
So there's another one.
I mean, but not only that, because you're skipping over a little part here. The reason that they were outside was because Dad went a hunting and was actually very successfully. He had looked like he had caught quite a few things. He had birds, he had rabbits, and he looked like he did really well. And then we see some dogs or wolves, or some kind of gray pack of animals that look like dogs that are
take off and start chasing him,
running after him, and he's pushing the horse as hard as he can. And he realizes he can't outrun these dogs as the country was not allowing it. And he throws everything that he caught, and he throws it to the dogs. Not just one while he's riding away to something to get them off the trail.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Now, when he came home from this hunting expedition, we had some Lyin.
Oh, let's get into that lying. So, how was the hunting?
Oh, it's great. I didn't catch anything,
Didn't
but
catch
you know,
anything.
they don't got anything.
Lyin.
Why?
You caught a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes, and the way we find out that, you know, we already knew it because we saw him with the horse, and we already knew this is the thing, as a kid you don't really realize, is that maybe you don't understand so much that the mother didn't know what was happening and that he was able to say, well, I didn't catch anything, right?
Yeah, so he's lying.
Right, and he's
Bottom
lying.
line, he's
But
lying.
the thing is, then you come back and you find out, the reason you find out that the dogs actually did follow him anyway, because they got a shit ton of food from this guy. They're going on and saying, oh, we're going to come over here, is the daughter wakes up in the middle of the night looking for the dog. The dog's missing. She goes outside. They have no door. Okay?
Oh, yeah, they have no door.
They have no door. So he left them without telling them that he had seen indigenous people that had been known to, some of them, make settlers move, which it was really in their best interest at that point, right?
Yes.
Because that was their land. He didn't say anything to them, and now they have a cloth that's serving as their doorway. He's sitting outside with a fire, and you see what?
You see a whole bunch of dogs running around that could be dogs, could be wolves. They're just circling, and then says, oh, yeah, I figured they followed me home. But you didn't say anything about that when you got home.
Then he tells the daughter to keep it quiet
Keep
from
it
the
quiet.
mother.
Don't tell your mother. She can't handle this.
Now, but what does that teach you as a kid? Like, when I look at that now, like, what did that teach me as a kid? That if your parent tells you don't say something to somebody, why would you encourage lying? Like, this is future lying, isn't it?
Well, that's why this is Dyin, Cryin, and
Dyin,
Lyin.
Cryin, and Lyin.
And that brings us on to the next point on this. So now we get past all of this, and they're in the home, and now we know indigenous people. Now all of a sudden we spot a big fire.
Yes.
A big fire.
Huge fire, like the whole side.
Or it was implied, right? It
Right.
was set by the indigenous people. They want them out of there.
Yeah. And they had been hearing, like, drumming for a while.
Yep, but now they set a fire. So right away, it brings us right back to Cryin. Who's crying?
Everyone, they're screaming
littlest
for
child.
each other. Oh my gosh, in terror.
The littlest child is crying. Why? Pick her up and set her in the creek where she'll be safe.
Right, as everyone else is, the younger kid, the older kids, I guess, are running back and forth with buckets.
Grabbing water and putting out this fire while the little kid's crying her eyes out sitting in this creek.
By herself while they're screaming to each other, which I consider a kind of crying, because they're screaming to each other to try to coordinate these actions. There's a whole bunch of crying. The land is on fire. We find out later on that this actually is a different indigenous tribe. The original indigenous tribe that got the tobacco comes back in because their chief spoke French.
Yes, which is more than mom or dad could do.
Yes. Well, mom seemed to kind of understand it.
So let's push forward. They get the fire out. Everything looks great. They're breaking ground. Now, here's the best part of the whole show. Who shows up?
No, before that, they buy equipment.
Yes,
They get to the point where they buy
equipment.
They're getting to the point where everything's all settled.
Right.
They're starting to really make it here.
And then what happens? The government shows up, says, you got to vacate.
Why? Because the lines have been redrawn, which it was.
You're in indigenous zone here. You got to go. So, Cryin,
Yeah.
and their hopes and dreams
Dying.
went a dying.
They just did.
So, At the end of all of this, they're right back to square one. And not only that, but all the money they spent on the tools and equipment they have to leave behind.
Yes. So whatever they did to get all that stuff, all that effort, they weren't able to benefit from it at all. Somebody else benefited
So
from
they
it.
basically wasted a year and a half or so of their life. Dyin, crying, and lying.
And they ended with crying and they started with it.
Right.
Yeah, so we can just loop back around to the cry and start the whole adventure all over again.
And that's going to wrap it up for this pilot episode. Tune in next week for episode 1, the beginning.
And the continuation of Two Luckies,
Two Luckies podcast.
the podcast. Two Luckies, the podcast.
Two Luckies podcast.
Two Luckies,
The podcast.